So, to what has been seen by some experts as a snub, Japan opted not to invite South Africa at this year's Group of Seven summit being held in Hiroshima in Japan in May. Now, instead, the president of the Comoros and African Union Chairperson, Azali Assoumani, will represent the African continent. Now, the meeting comprises of the world's most industrialized and developed economies, which of course include France, Germany, Japan, Italy, the United States of America, the United Kingdom and Canada. It has also prominently translated into a formal, high-profile venue for discussing and coordinating solutions pertaining to global issues, especially in areas of security, trade, and climate change, among others. Now, South Africa has, over the years, been a regular participant representing the African agenda. So, to give us some analysis on what could have brought this on and whether there should be any worry or consternation around it, we're joined virtually by Steven Gruzd, who's head of the African Governance and Diplomacy Program at the South African Institute of International Affairs, SAIIA. Steven, good morning. Thanks so much for speaking to us here on Morning Live.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
So I thought this was very interesting over the weekend when people were actually speaking about this on social media, and some, of course, naturally jumping to the conclusion that this had to do with South Africa perhaps losing grip and losing its shine when it comes to how the rest of the world sees us. Is that how this possibly could be read?
Well, it is a bit unusual considering that we've been a regular attendee at these summits for many years, at least since Thabo Mbeki's days. Of course, it is the prerogative of the host country to decide who else it wants to invite apart from the core seven members. And Japan has made the decision to, as you said, invite the head of the African Union to represent Africa. The presidency and DIRCO have been quick to say this is not a snub. This is perfectly fine that the AU can be represented by the country that is sitting in the chair, which is Comoros this year. But, you know, I think one must look at it and say it is a bit unusual that South Africa is not continuing to be invited to these events and may indeed be a sign that its international standing or its shine has faded somewhat.
So looking at that development, is this, would you say, as some would like to see it, and I know you've kind of touched on it, but could one read into that South Africa is perhaps slipping as one of Africa's powerhouses, at least as we are viewed by the international community?
So South Africa has said that they're actually pleased that the Comoros and President Assoumani has been invited because it's a sign that Africa is taken seriously and the African Union is taken seriously. I mean, others have said that this might be due to South Africa's stance on the Russian invasion of Ukraine, which has not followed the Western line but has abstained and claimed non-alignment, but has seemed to be leaning towards Russia from many choices that the country has made, and that this might be a punishment. I think we'll never know. I don't think anybody would be as explicit as that, but it is concerning at this time. And Africa has many powerful countries, Nigeria, South Africa, Ethiopia, Egypt, that can all stand as the gateway to the continent. So I don't think South Africa has a monopoly on that, and this is just an instance of showing that there are other countries that matter to the world. And even though the Comoros is a tiny island state, it is the chair of the African Union for the year, and that prestige has been recognized by the G7 or by Japan specifically as the host.
So then the next question would be, Steven, could this possibly create some sort of rift, or maybe not a rift, but some unease in the relationship between South Africa and Japan as a strategic trading partner?
It could, and there's a little bit of history to this because Japan hosts what's called TICAD, the Tokyo International Conference on African Development, every few years. And last year it was held in Tunisia. And South Africa objected to Morocco being invited because it believes Morocco is occupying the Western Sahara. And in protest, South Africa did not send the president to Tunisia. And Japan was quite upset about that. So it may be in a kind of diplomatic retaliation for that. Diplomats can be quite petty about these things. But it does raise questions about the strength of the relationship with Japan. I know Japan is among many foreign countries stationed in South Africa that complain that they don't get enough top-level access to the Department of International Relations and Cooperation, and that they struggle to get meetings with senior diplomats, etc. This is a common refrain from many countries based in South Africa.
And of course, I think for many South Africans, the main concern, Stephen, would be around foreign direct investment into South Africa. But given that we've seen several high-profile visits from international dignitaries, presidents as well, given that we have just witnessed the 5th investment conference in Sandton a few weeks ago, global events such as the G7, does that take on still, even though we have had these visits and hosted the conference, do these still take on significant importance in terms of boosting the country and, of course, by extension, the continent's investment message?
I think so. The G7 has somewhat been eclipsed by the G20, which is the 20 most, the largest economies in the world, of which, of course, South Africa is a member, and the only African member of the G20. But the G7 is still important. These are the world's richest countries. And the fact that President Ramaphosa won't be there may mean that we have to forego some opportunities for investment. But as you say, many dignitaries, high-ranking government officials have been to South Africa. We've had the investment conferences every year since President Ramaphosa took over. And, maybe that's the venue where pledges would be made. But I think with South Africa not being at the table in Hiroshima, there may be missed opportunities.
Well, Stephen, thanks so much for those insights. Steven Gruzd is head of the African Governance and Diplomacy Program at the South African Institute of International Affairs. And I love those insights just in helping us understand some of the conversations that have been taking place. And those, of course, who are of the view that Japan not inviting South Africa to that G7 meeting could be seen as a snub. So you can make up your own mind about that.